Hey guys, this is Game Jammin', and welcome to the latest episode of Tempo Storm's theory testing, Sombra Hacks Update. So you guys may have already seen that I did a video on Sombra hacks, but a recent patch change has made it so hacks are more likely to be interrupted, even though the timing on it hasn't really changed. They've also added a 2-second cooldown to the ability, so we wanted to test out and see how that felt in-game. Now, if you haven't seen the previous video, Sombra's hacks have been recently updated to be 0.65 seconds long, and in previous testing, it felt pretty bad, where even though we thought we had responded in time, the hacks still seemed to go off anyways. This recent update should change that, so we wanted to see how that affected things. So before we get into testing, I want to ask you all a question. Have you played against the latest Sombra, and does she feel good to play against, or do you still have issues stopping the hack? Let me know in the comments below. Now let's get to testing. Test number 1, can you interrupt while turned 90 degrees? What we mean by that is, if you are facing slightly away from the Sombra and she starts hacking you, do you have enough time to turn and then fire to stop and interrupt her attack? You can see Zarya's warming up with the hair whipping back and forth. But we found that there is definitely enough time. If you are good enough to spin around the 90 degrees, then it should be no problem. And this was not the same case when we were doing it last time. Test number 2, can you interrupt while facing away? So the idea is, can you respond to Sombra's hack and have enough time to do a 180 and stop her with an attack? In our previous testing, it was impossible to do, or as far as we could tell, it was very, very difficult to do. It's still semi-difficult just because the skill of turning 180 quickly is hard, but if you know how to do it, you definitely can get it done, and it will stop her in time. Test number 3, can you interrupt with a Zarya bubble? And the answer is a resounding yes. When in previous testing we had issues because sometimes there were simultaneous hacks, which can still happen. In the current version, it felt very good that if you heard the sound and clicked the button, you had enough time to respond and stop with a Zarya bubble. Test number 4, what about Reinhardt's shield? In the previous testing, we had a lot of issues getting the shield up in time. Even though we thought it would get it done, it would show up on our screen, but we'd still get hacked anyways. However, in the current version, it feels, the only word to describe it is it feels great. It feels like if you see it, there's enough time for you to respond, and you can get your shield up. Now, sometimes I can mess it up by being a little bit slow. But despite even having even a little bit of lag, I had 90 milliseconds ping versus my friend who was at 30 and another friend at 60. It felt like it worked pretty well. We also did some spin tests where we had the shield up already and then we turned from the left to the right. And we found that if we had the shield up ahead of time, it was pretty effective to just turn the shield and block the hack. However, if you had the shield down, there was just enough of a delay from you trying to pick up your shields while at the same time spinning that you may not block the hack in time. Test number 5. Is Brigitte's shield good enough? We were afraid that Brigitte's shield might be too small in comparison to Reinhardt's shield, and that hacking may have an easier time of going off. But after doing some testing, we found that it pretty much worked the same way as Reinhardt's shield. If you had it up, it was a little bit easier to turn and respond. However, even if you had it down, you still had enough time to respond. And yes, there is a little bit more area that Sombra can work with. So as opposed to having to get all the way behind a Reinhardt, she can get kind of to the side of a Brigitte and be able to get the hack off. But again, you just turn slightly and the hack will stop. Test number 6. Can you peek corner safely? Last time when we did testing, we found that it was annoying that you could try to get behind a wall or get to natural cover and the hack would still go off with a relatively strong frequency. So we did this exact same testing in a different location, but it's still the same concept. And what we found was that most of the time there was plenty of time to react in order to get behind a corner. So as long as we peeked fairly close to the wall, we would have enough time. Now, I started going out a little bit wider and wider, and so eventually there's a point where you don't have enough time to walk back, but that's fair because there's still enough time to peek and get back behind cover, no problem. Test number 7, will poles interrupt hack? In the patch notes, there was some mention about the code being changed before to make sure the polls didn't cause an issue. So we're looking at this poll, and what we initially thought, I kind of thought it would ignore the poll. But what we ended up finding out that was this poll was thick enough to actually stop the hack no matter what. And so it actually feels pretty good because, again, the poll feels thick enough that, yes, I do agree it did get in the way. So it makes sense for it to get interrupted. And I think it's doing its job right here. Now, we didn't test a whole bunch of polls, but in general, it felt good in the testing that we did. Test number 8. When two Sombras try to hack each other, who wins? Now, if you remember from the last time I did this video, we did this testing in there as well, and we came to the conclusion that we couldn't figure out what was happening. But we tried it again, and we're like, you know what? We're going to try this a few times, see if we can test it, see if we can figure it out. Does it have to do with lag? Does it have to do with something else? I had some different theories about it. We tried a bunch of different things, and basically the results were all over the place. I mean, the only general rule we found was that it seemed that whoever had the lower lag was generally the winner. Now, is this always the case? No, it was kind of inconsistent. We would do the same test over and over, and it would be like 90% success rate. So it's like, I can't exactly tell what's happening here. The general final answer for this is it feels like lower lag is better, but it didn't feel necessarily unfair. These are tests, again, where it's kind of simultaneous interaction, so I would call it a coin flip anyways. You should be trying to do something else instead of running directly at your opponent at the same time they're running at you. And finally, our last test, test number 9. Can Sombra hack a turret that is targeting her? So last time when we did the testing, we found a way to kind of abuse how the hack was working before, and you could get a hack off on the turret before it was able to respond to you and get to cover just in the nick of time. However, with the new hack update, it is very, very difficult, if not impossible. I mean, we weren't saying it was completely impossible. There is probably a way to get it to work. But really the only way it's going to happen is if you abuse sight lines. So for some reason, there are some ways you can get to the turret where it's not targeting you, but you can still target it with the hack. I don't know if that's necessarily a bug, but it's kind of like, again, this is a borderline case. It's not very easy for it to work. It's only going to happen when you've got the right kind of cover helping you out. So that's it for all the testing we did. In general, everything felt pretty good. We felt that Sombra's hack was fair. There was enough time to respond, but it was still quicker than it was before, and it still felt okay to play against. I'm kind of curious what you guys think, so definitely let me know in the comments below how you think the new Sombra plays out, and we'll see you guys in the next video.